All right, we are back on the podcast talking NFL playoffs and more. A lot of news this week in the league. Joining me today is FanSided's NFL insider Matt Verderame. Matt, welcome. How are you?
Great. How you doing?
Pretty good. Talking to you today. A lot of good stuff here. New Yorkers are very interested, obviously, in the Jets hire. They got Robert Saleh from 49ers. What do you think about that decision?
I think so far it's the best hire of the offseason. Of all the teams we've seen, look, the Lions went off the board, so to speak, with Dan Campbell. Brandon Staley had a very successful year with the Rams as D coordinator, but he's only been in the league for 4 years. So that is a big move, and only a coordinator for 38 years old. I think Saleh is an incredibly impressive guy. Look, he took over for the 49ers a few years ago as a defensive coordinator. Obviously, they went to the Super Bowl on the back of that defense. I got to talk to him a little bit when I was down there covering that Super Bowl. Very impressive guy, very smart, relatable. The players loved him. I remember asking a few of the players about what they thought of him, both as a coach and just as someone in the locker room. They couldn't have raved anymore. So, listen, I think Saleh is going to go in there and with Joe Douglas provide the Jets with some professionalism, with some accountability. That's obviously something that's been lacking under Adam Gase, both with the players and especially with Gase himself. So I think it's a really good move, and I think it's a good first step in rebuilding the program.
Yeah, obviously, you mentioned he's a good hire. One thing that's been boggling my mind as I've watched this offseason is the fact that guys like Eric Bieniemy are not getting hired right now. So, like, what do you think is going on there? Why is it so hard for him to get a job?
There's theories all over the place. One of the theories has been that he doesn't interview particularly well. That was reported last year. I have a hard time believing that. I watch his press conferences every week, and he's pretty impressive. Now, I get it. A press conference is different than an interview. I understand all that. But Andy Reid, I believe it was on Monday, said that he feels like Eric Bieniemy would be somebody he would want his sons to be coached by. I mean, I don't know that you can get much higher praise than that from a guy who's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And Reid's gone out of his way to praise him a lot. Is it a racial component? It could be. Is it a matter of maybe he doesn't interview great? Could be. But if I'm a team looking for a head coach, I don't know how I couldn't at least interview Eric Bieniemy and then seriously consider him. I mean, Houston, up until this thing started to devolve with Deshaun Watson, didn't even interview him. Also didn't interview Robert Saleh, which is more of an indictment on the Texans than it is anybody else. But it seems to be that for whatever the reason, maybe Bieniemy's turned off some people in these interviews because everything he's done on the field and on the sideline would point you to a guy who should be the absolute cream of the crop as a head coaching candidate.
Yeah, you brought the Texans up. Can you tell me what the hell is going on over there? Because, like, I just don't get it with the Deshaun Watson thing, with this whole Jack Easterby storyline. SI had the big expose. What is going on over there?
So with the Texans, look, first of all, I don't know that anybody has a great grip of what's going on over there because it's so out of control. But, I talked to a source about 3 weeks ago, right at the end of the regular season, who said to me, who would know that, hey, look, Eric Bieniemy, John Dorsey, that's a pairing that they might like to go to Houston. They might like to go to Atlanta. Obviously, has not worked out. Didn't work out in Atlanta, and it would be shocking if it works out in Houston, at least as a tandem deal. Maybe Bieniemy still ends up there. They did interview him, but there was real interest at the outset on Bieniemy's part, from my understanding, to go to Houston. They never made a move. Now you have the Deshaun Watson stuff, where you're looking at this, and Watson asked ownership, just interview him. Just give the guy an interview, which should have been, the ownership should have just said, of course we're going to interview. You don't have to ask us to do that. They didn't. He feels betrayed. He feels lied to. And now you're in this situation where Easterby, who was a pastor for the Patriots, he was a chaplain. Like, he's not an NFL guy. In fact, Belichick was asked in December, is Jack Easterby an NFL personnel man? And Belichick unequivocally was like, no, he's not. And this is the person who's running the Houston Texans. The SI put out a really good piece that was co-bylined, I believe, by Greg Bishop and Jenny Ventures, who wrote that Easterby basically was on this crusade to find out all these different things about Sports Illustrated and how word was getting out. Look, the Texans have a hands-off owner in Cal McNair, who is a nice man by all accounts, but is somebody who is not disinterested, but just disassociated. And so Easterby has the keys to that car. He hires his buddy in Casario, and by hiring Casario, also from New England, for anyone who doesn't know, he's ensuring loyalty to himself. because Caserio is getting a 6-year, $36 million contract based off the fact Easterby hired him. So Caserio is going to do whatever the heck Easterby wants. And so you have this weird situation where Easterby is basically running the show. It's very disorganized. And I don't blame Watson, even though he just signed the extension a year ago. I don't blame him for saying, look, I want no part of this. If this is the way this organization is going to be run, then please move me, get me out of here. I'd like to have some success before I'm in my 30s.
Yeah, the Deshaun Watson thing is fascinating because obviously you never see a quarterback in his prime get traded ever, let alone like gun 25 just sign a long-term contract. And there are teams I'm sure line up across the league. Probably have 20 teams to give the Texans a call. Like, how do you think this ends up with it? You think he moves or you think he stays?
I'm still of the mind, and maybe a naive one, that he's not going to get traded. I just think Houston's going to say, look, we're an expansion team if we trade you. We cannot trade you. We have you signed for, I believe it's 6 more years. You can't move off a guy who's a 25-year-old MVP caliber player. I do quarterback rankings for us at FanSided every week, and I have him behind Mahomes and Rodgers, and that's it. Like, I think he's the 3rd best quarterback in football. And I think you get a year where he's the best quarterback in football. To trade that guy, who is a fantastic human being by all accounts. It's not as though he's some malcontent. He's dealt with more crap there between O'Brien and the trade of Hopkins and no defense and no offensive line. You have not heard a word negatively out of Deshaun Watson's mouth for all that stuff. And so if you're the Texans, well, I think if you're Cal McNair, you sit down with Watson and his representation, agent David Mulugeta, and say, look, we're not trading you. We're not going to trade you. You can sit out the next 6 years. We're not going to move you, but we want you to be happy. We want you to feel a part of this thing. Let's course correct. You want me to hire Eric Bieniemy? I will write a blank check to Eric Bieniemy. Is that what it's going to take? That's fine. That's what we'll do. Does it mean firing Jack Easterby because he's gone yesterday? Like, you need to placate him because this is a guy who's been a good soldier for a long time with this organization. And if you're gonna move off him now, first of all, it sends a message to the locker room that we basically just given up. Second of all, you have given up. And third of all, you move him. I don't care what kind of compensation you get back for him. You're never going to get enough. He's too talented.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd be hard pressed to see him move. Let's talk about some of the games though for this week. I want to talk about the Bills specifically because Buffalo obviously win their first 2 playoff games. They've kind of been under the radar here because all the news with the Chiefs and stuff like that. What do you think of what we've seen out of Buffalo the first 2 rounds?
So the first 2 rounds, it's kind of been interesting from them in this sense. They were thoroughly outplayed by Indianapolis, but they won the game, had a goal line stand. Indy had the slowest 2-minute drill in NFL history, a few other things. Bills win. I have been impressed by the Bills all year. I picked them to win the division before the year started. I think Allen has been better than anybody could have imagined, maybe even including himself and his team. He's been fantastic. If I had an MVP vote, he'd be 3rd on my list behind Mahomes and Rodgers. Rodgers, by the way, I think should win it. You look at the Bills, they've been excellent. If not for a Hail Mary, they won 10 straight to end the season. I mean, they've been phenomenal down the stretch. They're extremely well coached. They can throw the ball to anybody. I love that Brian Dable knows they can't run, doesn't even pretend to. Just says, fine, we're going to throw every down. We're not even going to try to run the football. Now, the playoff games have been interesting. As I said, I thought the Colts outplayed them. The Ravens game, does weather factor in a little bit? Yeah. Although, look, it's January and you play in Buffalo. Like, you have to be able to throw through the wind. I don't care. I don't care that it's windy. I thought the Bills' problems were more that the Ravens just outplayed them defensively. Now, that game comes down to Jackson making a brutal throw that gets run back for 101 yards. The play before that, which will get forgotten over time, I guess rightfully so, the play before, Jackson had a wide open touchdown and he missed the throw. If that's a quarterback who's typically a better passer than Lamar Jackson, is that a touchdown? Is it 10-10? I mean, the Bills have not played particularly well in terms of the totality of these games the first 2 weeks of the playoffs. Assuming Mahomes plays in the AFC title game, they are going to have to play much better to win this game. They're not going to beat the Chiefs if they go in there and they play the way they played against Indianapolis or Baltimore. They may be in the game, but they won't win the game. So I think they're capable of winning, but they're going to have to play their best.
Yeah, that makes some sense. And I think it's interesting also that both these games are rematches, both from week 6 this season. Kansas City won like in Buffalo 26-17. Tampa Bay won down in Tampa 38-10. Is there anything you look back at those 2 games and say, this is something I want to watch going into this weekend?
Well, I went back. I'm going to go back actually and watch the Packers-Bucks game again tonight. I haven't done it yet. I watched the Bills-Chiefs game yesterday, and then I'll try to do a little bit of all 22 on it if I have time. So I think in the AFC game, the Bills, and I want to give Steven Ruiz credit for this over at, for the win. He tweeted out and wrote about the fact that the Bills didn't blitz the Chiefs once in Week 6. It's the only time in the next gen stats era, 2016 on, that a team is not blitzed once for an entire game. They basically wanted to hold the Chiefs down throwing the football. Well, the Chiefs ended up rushing for 245 yards, and they gained over 500. If you're the Bills, are you willing to play that way again? The Chiefs only scored 26 points. There's a mixed extra point there if it matters to you, but they only scored 26 points, but they held the ball for 40-plus minutes. And so Allen had very little time to amass what was going to be needed, which is essentially 30 points. I think if you're the Bills, you have to play that way again. You cannot blitz Kansas City. You cannot say, well, we're going to try to shut down Edwards-Helaire. It'd be a murder scene. I mean, the Chiefs will throw the ball over creation. So I think you do that again, and you live with it. You hope he doesn't, you hope the Chiefs don't rush for 245. Well, that's a tough thing to match. That game comes down to one thing for me. If the Bills get pressure with 4, they can win. If they don't, they won't. If they don't get pressure with 4 guys, they're going to lose. On the NFC side, look, the Buccaneers had an incredible amount of success blitzing Rodgers. I believe they sacked him 5, maybe even 6 times. They hit him 13 times. And Rodgers threw a couple picks in that game, easily his worst game of the year. Now, maybe coincidentally, maybe not, they didn't have David Bakhtiari in that game. And the Buccaneers gave him a lot of problems up front. Well, they don't have Bakhtiari right now at the torn ACL. So what do you do if you're the Packers? I think the Packers are the better team. I do think, though, that the Buccaneers match up well with them. They can give them problems. And Pettin, the defense coordinator for the Packers in that game, was very, very passive. They dropped 9 guys at times against Brady. And while Brady didn't have a huge game throwing, the Bucs ran all over him. Does Pettin do that again? If he does, I think there's a real good chance they'll lose. You need to get pressure on Brady. Unlike Mahomes, who I don't think you ever blitz under any circumstance. Brady, even though it's not fun blitzing him, he doesn't have the arm strength anymore to worry about all those outside throws. Like, I would go after him and force him to get rid of the ball under duress. And the Packers did not do that Week 6. I'm curious to see if they reverse course this time.
Yeah, good to know there. The AFC game, obviously, the Chiefs Bills. Is this for you come down to just the fact that, like, if Patrick Mahomes is there, it's one game. If it's not, it's a completely different game?
Oh, if Mahomes isn't there, the Chiefs aren't going to win that game. Yep. If they do, it's one of the great coaching jobs of all time. If Kansas City beats them with Chad Henne, they should erect a statue of Andy Reid right after the game. Look, Chad Henne, a great story that they were able to win that game on Sunday, but he came in with a 19-10 lead, and it was 22-10 before Cleveland never got the ball. Okay, it wasn't like Chad Henne was marching the Chiefs up and down the field. If Mahomes plays again, and it's worth repeating, the Bills have to get pressure with 4, and not sometimes, all the time. They've got to consistently get pressure with 4 guys, drop 7, live with giving up some cheap yards underneath, live with some rushing yards under, in the ground game. That's the way the Niners played them in the Super Bowl. You go back and watch that game. The Niners did not blitz the Chiefs, but almost never. They played tons of cover 3. They dropped 7, and Bosa and Armstead and Buckner went to work, and D Ford. Now, the Bills do not have that front. And the Bills like to play a lot of cover 4, which Doug Farrar over at USA Today is a good friend, a great guy, detailed expertly. If they play cover 4 against the Chiefs, that is a coverage the Chiefs typically shred to bits, because they get post routes off of it. And Hill just gets one-on-one with their safety, and it's a match race to the end zone. If I'm the Bills, I'm playing cover 2 in that game. I'm mixing it up a little bit, but I'm playing a ton of cover 2. I'm playing some zone. I'm rushing 4, and I'm praying. And I'm hoping that I can get Mahomes to make one mistake. Strip sack him. Maybe he's not that comfortable, getting hit right now. Maybe throws it quick. Because if you can't get pressure, I don't care what you're playing behind it. He's just got too many weapons, and he's too good. They're going to find somebody who gets open, and it's going to be a gain of 15, 20-plus yards.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. The NFC game, obviously, you said these are 2 different teams, and we saw it back in Week 6. I think the thing that's interesting to me is, like, obviously, like, Rodgers gotten so much more comfortable with the secondary receivers. Saw the big strike to Allen Lazard in the title game. Like, do you think, like, he needs those guys again to really make the big difference here in this matchup, the Lazards, the MVSs of the world?
Yeah. Look, the Buccaneers are a team that they do love to blitz. They've blitzed more than any other NFC team outside of Arizona. And so I think if you're the Buccaneers, you're going to be aggressive, and you're going to hope that you can maybe bracket Adams, double Adams, and you're going to live with Jamel Dean on Lazard or Valdez Scantling, right? You're going to live like, I think if you're the Bucs, you're saying we're going to blitz. It's who we are. We won doing it against the Packers. We destroyed Rodgers. I think you feel good about that. I personally, if I'm Todd Bowles and he knows more football than I ever will even dream of knowing, but I would double Adams with Dean, who's their second corner, and a safety. I would put Devin White, who's phenomenal in coverage, on Tunyon or Jones, depending on who you see as the bigger threat. And then, look, I'd put Carlton Davis on the other receiver. And I'd try, he's your best corner. It's the old Belichick thing. And I've always believed in that. Put your best corner on the second best guy and double their best guy. That's how I would go about it. Do they do it? I don't know. But I think the Buccaneers are going to be a problem for Green Bay. I think Green Bay's favored and deservedly so. But there's a world here where Tampa's a real problem up at Lambeau on Sunday.
All right, so we have to put the prediction cap on here. Let's assume that Mahomes plays in this game, and I think it's everything we've seen is sort of trending that direction, like where we're getting good optimistic. He doesn't have a concussion. He has in the protocol for some reason, but assuming he plays, like, what are your picks for these two games?
So assuming he plays and he's healthy, I think the Chiefs win the game. I just think they're the better team. The Bills are really, really good. They're the only team that I thought at the beginning of the playoffs could beat Kansas City in the AFC if they played well. And I still feel that way. I think the Bills will score some points. Their Week 6 matchup, I don't care that much about. It was 26-17. It was in a driving rainstorm. Now, it might rain in Arrowhead on Sunday night. It's going to be 34 with a chance of rain. That would not be ideal for the Bills or the Chiefs for that matter. But, I think the Bills keep it close. I think they're in the game, and I think they could win. I think they're a very live underdog. But I think it's something like 33-24, something like that, with the Chiefs maybe scoring late to put it away. Maybe it's like a 6-point game, and the Chiefs drive down, kick a field goal. The NFC title game, I do think, is a little bit closer in terms of the final score. I'll take the Packers 27-23, somewhere in that range. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Bucs or the Bills win. I do think the Bucs have a slightly better shot of pulling the game off, just because of the way that the two teams match up in both sides of the bracket. So I'll take the Chiefs and Packers to get to the Super Bowl. But I do think it's a very, very competitive day on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a fun weekend of football, Matt. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it. Before I let you go, how can people follow you on social media about what we're doing over at FanSided?
So, yeah, first of all, check out FanSided. I mean, Michael does great work alongside so many other people on the NFL side. And really for all sports, we have a great NBA section, the step back. Look, go to fansided.com. You can always read my stuff there. If you don't go there, or you haven't, you should. But you can check it out on Twitter, at Matt Verderame. All my columns go up there. I do Twitter Lives all the time. And then the Stack in the Box podcast is something that I've been doing for a few years now. Do it twice a week. It's an hour-long show every week. Cover the whole league in depth. So if you can, give that a subscription, a rating, and review. We'd really be appreciated. Yeah, Matt goes on Twitter Live halftime of these games. It's a lot of fun listening to those conversations. Matt, thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Take care. Take care. All right, we are good. Thank you. No problem, man. Anytime. No problem. I will be working on my stuff this week, and hopefully I'll be on. I'm assuming there's a Super Bowl guide coming next week, so I'll keep an eye out for that. Okay, sounds good. All right, thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Right, bye.